Hello, team. Welcome, 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 welcome. How's everyone doing? We're talking sciatica today. Super excited to get you guys on here. We are coming from Movement RX headquarters in downtown San Diego. Hopefully you guys have been here. It's pretty gorgeous. Talking about sciatica today. Once you guys start getting logged in here, let's, whoa. That was brutal. My little thing here broke. Let's make sure we get some people in here. Tell us where you're from. Tell us where you're checking in. What's going on? How long ago? Assuming you have had a diagnosis and talked to some sort of medical professional, let us know where you're at, L5, S1, all that fun stuff. We never fully know exactly who we're talking to until you guys reach out. So let us know what's going on. We are going to kick this thing off here in a couple minutes. People are walking by. If you do not know, Movement RX headquarters is above Bear Republic CrossFit. And if you follow the CrossFit world, you need to know who Bear Republic is, because those guys and girls, their team finished in the top 10 in the country this year in the Open, which some freaky human beings down there. Super strong. Really awesome spot. So if you are in the San Diego area, make sure you come in, check these guys out, and then get upstairs. Come say hello to us. Movement RX, the low back fix, just above. We are in the clinic up here. So talking sciatica today, and we're going to get rolling here. Once you get checked in, make sure you tell us who you are, where you're from. This is exciting stuff. Check out my succulents up here. Hold on. Right there. We're spreading all of the good love around the succulent farm up there. I think succulents are really just like this offshoot of a cactus, which makes them great for people like me because we don't have to water them that much. There's no real, it's hard to kill a succulent. And they grow out here because you don't need like a whole lot of water. And this is the first time we've had water in forever. But we're going to get this thing rolling here in a couple minutes. Let's get everybody in. We are talking about sciatica, some solutions to your sciatica. There's one thing that we see more than anything. Talking about consults and things, we'll get into all this. Sciatica happens to be like we're going to uncover all this as we get rolling, but sciatica happens to be like the big confusing point, because everybody loves to get this diagnosis. They get handed their MRI and then the doctor says, you have this. And everybody just attaches to that diagnosis like, well, this is mine. I am sciatica. No, we're going to break that today. That's the big goal of this. Make sure that you are able to understand exactly what your doctor may be telling you, talking about understanding some of the solutions that you can get across. We've got 3 big solutions we're going to talk about today. And then we're going to get into a little bit of a Q&A, so keep the questions rolling. We have Molly on here. She's going to be moderating this, and she will be able to give you guys some links as we get through this that will help add a little bit of value to what we are talking about. So here we go. We're going to start this thing. Sciatica solutions. 3 things that you're going to be able to do. We're going to start breaking down this diagnosis today. So the big goal of what we're looking for, giving you guys some simple steps, some solutions. The first thing we want to talk about, we're going to be finding out kind of what is sciatica, like where does this diagnosis come from? What are some of the symptoms? The second piece, we're going to start getting into a little bit of the solution. So the sciatica thing is really interesting because you're talking not just about one specific thing that we need to be able to work on, but we're talking about like a host of, hey bud, a host of things that are made up in talking about leg pain, talking about back pain. All these things go into this one diagnosis. Doesn't make too much sense today or right now, but we're going to get into exactly what this is. Once we get into part 2 of this thing, we're going to be talking about some solutions. So talking about some breath work, mobility, stability, what does that all mean? And then getting into the final piece, some balance, understanding what balance means in our training, how we can start to move a little bit better to add pieces and add layers to this recovery piece. There's going to be a Q&A at the end, so make sure you stick around all the way to the end. Not only are we going to get those questions answered, but we're going to be giving you a link that's going to be set up so you can actually schedule a consult with us. We're going to be able to guide you with a little bit more in-depth stuff. So we're going to be posting a link here that's going to be, it's going to give you a score. We'll be mentioning this throughout, but the goal is get in here, take a quiz, and now we can start to understand, we have this diagnosis, how is it affecting our lives, and what are some of the steps that we can take. This sciatica score, we've tested it with tons of people. It's fantastic, it works. We use it as a baseline for kind of the, where does your pain rank on the scale of 1 to 10? It's going to, or these 10 quiz questions, you're going to get a score, and then there's going to be specific answers that you're going to be looking for based off of what score it is. Anywhere from, you may be perfect, you don't have any pain, it doesn't affect your day, awesome. All the way to debilitating pain, you need to go see specialists, whatever it is. Somewhere in the middle is where we're going to lie. People that are dealing with pain, chronic pain, don't have answers, and we're starting to add a little bit of value to understanding why you have this and how we can get out of this. So the very first thing, what is sciatica? Well, sciatica, turns out it's an awesome little word we have here. Our doctor hands us the MRI results, says you have sciatica, but what really is going on? Well, the first thing we want to think about is sciatic nerve, right? Sciatic nerve runs down our back. It's going to hit somewhere in that L4, L5. And what it is a symptom of a bulged disc, stenosis, spondy, whatever that piece is. And that nerve that's running along the spine, when that bulged disc comes out and lays on that nerve, that is the piece that you start to feel when you experience all of that leg pain, right? So the big reason that we talk about sciatica is because at some point, everyone that suffers from back pain is capable of having this diagnosis, right? Whether it comes from your spondy, stenosis, bulged disc, herniated disc, all of these pieces, whatever it is, when you start to go and find a doctor, find this diagnosis out, you're going to get into, at some point, the sciatic nerve. What we start to look for when you get into the symptoms, we're talking about low back pain, we're talking about leg pain, we're talking about maybe on the really, really bad scenarios, all the way down to your big toe, into your heel. We've even seen some foot drop. All this stuff happens specifically because of this sciatica. But what's really going on is it's a symptom of a bulge or herniated disc. And what is a bulge and herniated disc or stenosis, or what are all these caused from? They're caused by poor movement patterns. So when you get in to start taking that low back fix score or the sciatica score that's right underneath in the comment section here, get in there. You can start to take the quiz and understand all the pieces that go into understanding this pain. The next piece that we want to start to talk about is how do we start to recover from this, or what are the steps that you can take? I was speaking to somebody this weekend actually. Sciatica pops up. They've got an MRI scheduled this week, but that does them no good on Friday, right? So what are some of the big things that we can do to start to instantly relieve some of this pain and start to put some connections together? Number one thing that we want to start to work on is the breath, right? The breath is so important to what we do. Not only do we do it all the time, you have to be doing it right now. If you're not breathing, things are going to go really bad really quick. But on top of that, inside, when we're breathing, our abs are being used, right? We have not just these sweet six-pack up front, but we've got multifidi, we've got all these things that go on, and our breath controls the deep core, right? So it stabilizes our spine inside our ab, or inside our body. Those deep core muscles are activated by the breath. On top of that, resisting motion, right? So anti-extension, anti-lateral flexion, anti-rotation, all these pieces, when we get in, if we're unable to control the core, we start to get into a place where we're over-rotating, and now that twisting puts a lot of pressure on our low back. As soon as we over-rotate, we start to find out that this movement piece gets into these bulged herniated discs leading to injury, which leads to the sciatica being on that sciatic nerve, right? So mobility and stability kind of play off of this. So mobility, when we talk about mobility, we're talking about proper tissue length. So are you actually flexible enough? The stability piece is a little bit more of a neurological piece. So you're talking about, can you stabilize the joint? Yes, we may have enough flexibility, but what if you have too much flexibility and now we can't stabilize the joint? So this piece really gets into like the overstretching side. So if you can do a quick little test, hopefully you're not in your office, and if you are in your office, that's cool with me too. stand up real quick. And if you can bend over, and what we're looking for in optimal range of motion is going to be bending over and touching your toes. If you can bend over and just touch your toes, we've gotten there. You did it, right? But what we see the majority of the time is when people keep their legs straight, an inability to reach over and actually get to that full range of motion. So if you bend over and you cannot touch your toes, we need to start working on a mobility plan. If you can bend over and you palm the ground, we see this a lot in the yoga community, maybe in some gymnasts. When you bend over, if you can palm the ground, that's not good. There's this odd misconception that the more mobility we have, the healthier you are, and that we can stretch away all of our problems. But if you can't control the joint and we end up overstretching, now you're in a place where we're going to be experiencing a lot of back pain. It's going to start putting a ton of pressure on our discs. And as we've talked about before, those discs run right into that sciatic nerve, pain shooting down your legs, all the bad things, right? So these are the two pieces that we need to start assessing. One, we can implement the breath right now. Mobility, stability, you can just do a quick little assessment on yourself, bend over, touch your toes. Last week we were on here talking about the sit-to-stand test, another fantastic example that brings both of them in. If you don't have the mobility to be able to bend over or to send your hips back and get all the way down to the ground, or the stability to be able to stabilize those joints as we're going all the way to the ground. If you can bend over and just touch your toes, optimal range of motion, you're killing it. If we can't get there, or if you go too far, we're going to be putting ourselves in a position where our movement quality is not there, which leads us into the third part of this thing of how do we kind of start to develop these movement patterns, right? So structural balance is like the base level of everything we do. When you get in, you're going to take this quiz. You've got 10 questions. The link is down on the bottom, so make sure you click on that. Get in there and take the quiz. You're going to find out how all of these pieces fit into your diagnosis or into the mobility, stability, breathwork pieces that we're talking about, right? So get in and take the quiz. When you get done with that, you're going to be given instructions on how to kind of combat this based off of what your score is. So in the balance piece, we're talking about structural balance. So everybody knows, we all look in the mirror every day. We got big flex off, you see what's going on. It's really easy to see the front half of our body. But what really goes on when we start moving is the back half of our body is the big movers, right? So we think about our posterior chain, you're talking about glutes, hamstrings, calves, lats, the big muscles in our back, right? These are going to be the big movers for all human movement, whether we're walking, running, jumping, sprinting, playing with your kids, whatever it is, we need to be able to access the posterior chain. Unfortunately, because we're such a sedentary lifestyle, a lot of the times we're sitting in a chair throughout the day, right? All the muscular is turned off. We sit in this rounded position, and then when we go to move, our brain hasn't talked to the back half of our body in so long that we're unable to access the big muscles. And what that does is it turns us into an anterior chain, which is going to be our chest, abs, quads, anterior chain driven animal, and we don't want that. We want to be working out of our posterior chain with the big muscles, glutes, hamstrings, lats. That's the side of our body that we want to be working on. If your brain isn't talking to the back half of your body and you're on this, you need to take that score because you need to find out where we're lacking the ability to access that posterior chain, and that is very good chance that that is where the pain is coming from. 3 areas that we start to see this deficiency pop up. So posterior, anterior. The second part is going to be side-to-side movement, right? So even if you are going to the gym, even if you are on a training plan, and you're still in pain, there's probably a decent reason for that, being that oh my gosh, we have a real low back fix celebrity in here right now. Man, this is a great surprise. So, come on in. I want to show all the people you. This is...
All right.
Hey! This is Nathan. He is one of our...
Yes, I am.
Very early... Man, I'm like locked into here. He's one of our very first people. He's got a beautiful new baby over there.
Yeah.
So, getting back.
Cool.
Thanks, bud. What an awesome little drop-in. So, when we start to talk about... Now I'm seriously under pressure. He's here in person. You guys are out there on the internet. It's all over the place. So, when we're talking about this structural balance, posterior and anterior, right? We need to be able to access our posterior chain in order to stay nice and healthy. Part 2, lateral movement, side to side. Never in the real world are we actually going to be moving only straight ahead, right? we move side to side. As soon as you stop and change directions, maybe you're even just walking to the store. As soon as you change aisles in the grocery store, you're going to be moving laterally, right? We need to be able to access all of these directions and be able to stabilize our core and be able to stabilize our pelvis. So all these pieces are going to lead into the into this structural balance piece. The final piece that we want to talk about, bilateral, unilateral. So often when we're training, so often when we're doing things, we're standing and still. When we stand, we're totally standing on 2 feet. Everything's easy to understand there, right? We've got our glutes turned on, hamstrings are turned on, and then all of a sudden we go to move. And what happens? We shift our weight to one side, we pick one leg up, and we take a step forward. Well, what happens in that if we don't understand how to stabilize our spine while we're standing on one leg, right? So bilateral, we want to think about standing. When we start to talk about unilateral movements, we're talking about walking, right? Or running if you want to progress it to that. But most all human movement is done on one leg. So if you cannot stand on one leg and balance for 30 seconds and you have sciatica, we need to start to handle the baseline first, right? So this balance piece becomes incredibly important. Pain in the leg, pain in the low back, learn how to breathe properly, mobility and stability. So do we have proper tissue length? Do we have the ability to stabilize those joints and muscles through that proper range of motion? And then getting into this structural balance piece, anterior and posterior chain, right? Can we access our posterior chain? Can we use our glutes and hamstrings as the big movers? Lateral movements, do we know how to move side to side? And then bilateral and unilateral. So standing, 2 legs, walking, moving, always going to be done on one leg. And we need to be able to access the core, stabilize the spine during all these positions, right? Make sure you get in, click on that link so that we can get that sciatica score and get some information to you and find out exactly where you are in your diagnosis, where we can start to improve on these things. And then this last piece, we got a big Q&A coming up, so make sure you get your questions up there. We've already got a couple in that came from people that were unable to attend, but make sure you get your questions up. On top of that, we're going to be posting a link. You're going to be able to set up a consult with either Dr. Theresa or myself. We're going to be able to actually get in and talk specifically about your diagnosis, right? So not just be on here, take this quiz, but we're going to be sending you another link. Molly's going to be posting it up. And we want you to be on here, setting up a call with us so that we can talk about your specific diagnosis. From there, we'll be able to go through this sciatica score that you probably have already taken, and then we can start to actually give you a movement plan based off what's going on, right? So we're going to be able to teach you how to breathe properly, to stabilize your spine, down-regulate the muscles. We're going to find out what specific plan do you need to be on, a mobility plan or a stability plan. And then once we get into those and understand your specifics, then we can start to get into a little bit of that structural balance piece, adding a little bit of strength, developing some power movements so that you can start to access posterior chain, side-to-side movements, all this, so that when you go to move in real life, we're not just saying, I'm pain-free today, but you actually have a system of education. So the link is up there. We're going to answer a few questions. One of which we got earlier today. We had a lady write in, unfortunately, a really bad scenario, had sciatica, went in, got the surgery, came out. Surgery did not go so well, dropped foot, and getting into some like really, really severe pain. First off, what we need to do, we need to get in and take that quiz so that we can have like an actual assessment of how this is affecting your life. Part 2 is going to be scheduling a call with us. I already sent you the link to schedule the call, but make sure you get in there so that we can do this. Hi, Adri. So good to see you. The third part, for people that are suffering from the same thing. So the most important thing we need to do is start to understand the basics of movement, right? Like this herniated disc, I believe, is what started this problem. And from here, we need to start to just work off the checklist. So when we're when we are helping people with these movement problems, I very rarely talk about the actual symptoms that's going on. When I say symptoms, I'm talking about the sciatica. I'm talking about the the drop foot, I'm talking about the back pain, the leg pain. We don't like to talk about that. And the reason we don't like to talk about that is because we need to change the conversation, right? It's so easy for people to get addicted almost to this diagnosis, and it's so easy to just attach yourself to it. It's almost as if once you break free of living in pain, things start to get crazy because you don't know who you are. You've been dealing with this for so long. It's almost like the topic of conversation that you have with people. As soon as they see you, they see this drop foot piece, whatever it is. But the truth is like we can get in and we can really help the equation. Does it mean you're going to be 100% in a week? No. But what we can do is start to develop the musculature, develop the movement patterns so that not only is the problem not getting worse, but we start to actually move a lot better. The tissues, all that stress that is felt, especially the emotional stress that's felt on our tissues or felt in our body, is actually stored in our tissues. So we walk around and we're tense all the time. Finding the breath helps downregulate the tissues, get accustomed to the pain, start to relieve that pain, and then we can get in and test the mobility and stability pieces so that going forward, we're able to strengthen your body properly. It's going to move better, and we're not going to have that stress associated with it. Another question that we had come in, what is the proper steps to attacking any sciatica when faced with kind of the surgery piece? And what we always talk about, like the big recommendation that we always give when any time someone is facing the surgery, like surgery is so freaking scary. And unfortunately, it doesn't really work that well. Like the studies that come back, it's not really something that it's almost as if as soon as you take that route, there's a stopwatch waiting for you to be onto the next surgery. And what happens, we start down that path and things go bad very quickly, right? Because we haven't fixed whatever movement problem is actually the root cause of all this. So Molly, to get to your question, does sciatica just come from the low back or pelvis? That is going to be the majority. So if we think about our body as this straight line, right? Right in the middle is our hip. And if the spine stopped right at the hip, everything would be fine because everybody would move well. Unfortunately, the spine goes all the way down into our pelvis through the sacrum, right? And when we bend at the hip, we need to be able to move properly to push the hips back and clear, or we start to use our spine as a joint. When we start using our spine as a joint, that's where all of the big problems come in, right? We start compressing nerves, that sciatica piece comes up, and that's when the sciatic nerve gets compressed. Lots of pain shoots down the leg, whatever it is, whatever the symptoms are. So, sciatica, come hang out with us. Learn how to breathe. Check out mobility and stability, and then we're going to start working on some balance pieces in your life. Make sure you get in here. Click on the link to schedule a free consult with us. Get in there, check out the sciatica score, find out what your pain means to you, get some actual advice on how you can work on this and develop this education system so that you never have to worry about this again. Thank you for hanging out, joining me. See you guys next week. We're going to be, or actually tomorrow, the big blog article gets released on this information. So make sure you check that out. We'll have it up in the Facebook groups. We'll have it in all of the socials. And thank you for being a part of this.